Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar of the Tiger Writes. And Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. I can't forget him. He won't let me. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 2 of Breaking Step. Tibs barely noticed the city as it came to be around him. It's going to be a comma right here, and what was left of his team walked behind the procession, passing merchant's booth. People paused to watch, even once they were out of the market surrounding the transportation platform, then returned to their shopping or selling. Tibs. Okay. All right, this needs to be corrected. Tibs ignored the ambers, demanding to grow. Demanding to grow. No. After the bowed. After the at the unbowed head. Tibs ignored the ambers, demanding, and the reason I'm correcting is my co-scriptor literally could not figure out what I meant. So this tells me, and he knows the story, so this tells me it needs clarification. He thought it meant that the city was, that the temperatures were hot. Tibs ignored the ambers, demanding to grow into an inferno at the unbowed head after they put who was on the stretcher out of their mind. He wouldn't let the ice thaw. These people didn't deserve his anger. Even without essence, those living in this city followed the teachings of purity. Hard work first, then the rest. They had acknowledged someone had fallen, and now they had work to do. A few did pause longer, some outright stopped. Not everyone had the same dedication to their dungeon's element. But then someone pulled them away, so they'd stop wasting time. He wondered what they were heading for. Heading to. Did people who wield purity have time for rites of the dead? That doesn't feel right. Did people who wield purity have time for the rites? Have time for the rites of the dead. It doesn't feel right, but I can't work out why or how to resolve it. Would Karina's family do more than pause in their work? If they perform rites, what would they look like? On his street, the dead were left where they fell, to be collected by somber women in robes of brown so deep they could be black. Before that, the scavengers took everything of value. Where they took the bodies, Tibs didn't know. He never cared to find out. Mama had remained hidden in their small home until the warm weather returned and the smell pushed even Tibs away for longer than he'd like. When he'd returned and found their home empty, the pain hadn't lasted. His hunger was too strong. It was when he understood she wouldn't be there for him anymore, that he'd have to fend alone through everything that was yet to come. He'd left and never went back, focused on surviving however he had to. When the procession stopped, Tibbs didn't recognize the drab buildings. They looked only slightly better than those closer to the platform. This could be where Carino's family lived. Someone stepped behind Tibbs and placed a hand on his shoulder. Zacharias smiled at him when he looked, squeezed his shoulder, then let go. At the front of the procession, Paolo looked at Carina, pulled the hood of his robe up, then turned and led them onward. When they stopped, they were in a courtyard on the east side of the city, darkened by the mountain's shadow. Men and women waited for them. Tibbs recognized Carina's parents, and others seemed familiars, but most were strangers. Another one fell. The voice was so unexpected that even frozen as he was, Tibbs startled. Both that Val spoke and the solemnness in her voice caused it. They were much further from the mountain, the dungeon, than Stowe could reach. What is he doing here? Karen asked in disgust. Not now, Val replied. Can't you see how sad he is? All I'm seeing is how cold he's made himself. Why do you think that is? He isn't the first. Our people make connection with others, and they deal with grief in their own way. He does it not now. The firmness in Val's tone silenced Kraken. How long had it taken the dungeon to push her influence this far? Why wasn't she making this part of herself? There was a wall around the entrance, which Tibbs had thought was how far she reached, and Carina had mentioned how it was there to keep the town safe in case a dungeon creature escaped. He'd been well inside the wall the first time he'd heard Val and Karen. Did it mean every house was a dungeon room? She couldn't affect anywhere people were, but how long did she need them out of their home before she could convert it? He sensed his surroundings, and none of the structures felt any different. Thinking back on his first time within the dungeon, before they realized he heard them, anytime they talked about... Okay, this feels like it should be like that. Anytime they talked... Actually, no. Sean's going to correct that automatically. It's too long. Thinking back on his first time within the dungeon, before they realized he heard them, anytime they talked about the clerics and other runners going through their floors, there was always respect in their voice. They were certainly amused at the antics, but never did they speak like runners weren't important. Maybe... He looked around. Maybe Val wasn't turning everything she reached into part of her because she wanted the town folks here to live unhindered by her creatures. She had to have creatures. Fighters and archers couldn't simply walk through empty halls and do puzzles. They needed creatures to be put to the test. My daughter chose to work a different path, Carina's mother said in a steady voice, once she took position where Paolo had stood. And I failed her. I failed her by not... Okay, there's no comma here. And I failed her by not understanding that her choice did not mean she rejected what we stand for. In demanding that she adhere to my way of working, I pushed her further into her own, while never realizing how hard she worked to achieve it. She broke our rules. She broke our rules, made her way to the forbidden parts of the great library, and all I saw was that she disobeyed me. Not how hard she had to work to make it past the security keeping the uninitiated out. She paused, but shook her head when Paolo whispered to her ear. My actions led to her being discovered, not her own. She said, if I had understood what she craved, allowed her to pursue those cravings, she would have followed the steps and been allowed within the library. Instead, my stubbornness in only seeing that what she wasn't doing led to her being taken away from our element, led to her having to choose another. She watched as her word caused the crowd to shift uncomfortably. My daughter honored air as much as purity. She added lightness to her dedication to the work. She did not replace one with the other. My weakness pushed her to another element, but my daughter remained true to who we are. The Whitebloods are clerics, but before that, we are hard workers. My daughter worked hard at everything she did. She worked hard at becoming a sorcerer. She worked hard at surviving a dungeon she had never been prepared for. She reached back, and Karina's father joined her, taking her hand. We were fortunate to see her again when, as is tradition with the young dungeon, those surviving them are allowed to leave while it transitions to a higher difficulty. And my daughter chose to return home, chose to spend some of the little time she had away from that place with the person who had forced her there. This time, the pause was caused by tears. I met the woman my daughter became. I found out about the work she put into becoming her. Her voice cracked. She forgave my stubbornness. She took slow breaths. No, slow breath. Okay, why? No, I'm sorry. This is plural. Slow breath. I am not here to grieve the daughter I lost. I am here honoring the woman she was, the woman who fought to protect the town she lived in, who only stopped working hard when that work was brought to an end by a man who should never have been allowed to come close to that town. She straightened. My daughter is of air, but she made purity proud. Tibs swallowed and the ice cracked. The tear fell before he regained control, freezing the pain so it couldn't dig its claws into him. She stepped aside and the crowd parted to reveal an intricately carved metal table. Okay, these are how I let my co-scripter know I have questions, because there has to be a better term for what I'm describing, and he pointed out a few and then went, but would Tibs know about them? And the answer is no, not really. So that's going to stay. The crowd parted to reveal an intricately carved metal table with thick leads. Lines and knots were all Tibs could make out of the design. As is tradition, she said, as the stretcher was placed atop the table, my daughter will be purified down to the element she was, so she may join it. It will be air. But I also believe some of her will make their way to purity, and that purity will embrace her without hesitation. Paolo, along with 5 others, each with their hoods up, stepped around Karina and placed a hand on her. Tibs sensed the purity essence flow from them and into her, and her colors faded away, letting him see through her until she was no longer there. Sweet travel, child of air, Val said, as the last of Karina ceased to be. I did not get to test you, but you proved yourself one of the elements. Know that I will remember you, Karina of the White Bloods. Your essence rejoins those who came before you, Clarence said solemnly, and the sparks that made you will guide those who come after. Goodbye, sis, Jackal whispered. Abyss, I'm going to miss you. And this concludes Chapter 2 of Breaking Step. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story as well as the other books before, they are available on Royal Road for free. If you want to read ahead as well as support me, that is on my Patreon, where you can also get access to just about everything else I've written. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. on Twitch. The links are in the notes, and with that, I shall wish you a good day.